The song is just eternal. It doesn't matter how many times I listen to it. The song will just take me back to a place that I forgot was there. There's this reminiscence that just oozes out of the song, out of every instrument, beat, timing. It makes history such a fascinating listen. And it's not just me who thinks this. As I've come back over the years, it's just that same sentiment. It has this reminiscent and nostalgic feeling to it. I just want to break down why it makes me and other people feel the way we do about it. And also, as a disclaimer before I get into it, I'm not a musician, nor do I know like most music terms. So if I get something technically wrong, blame my middle school teacher for teaching me bad music. The song was composed for the game Sonic Mega Collection, and the director for its music was Hideki Kobayashi. From what the wikis say about him, he's done a lot of music for different games, especially Sega ones. He would primarily be known as the music director for Phantasy Star Online. The game has specifically a lot of synthy, futuristic kind of music. It's very typical of cool 90s computer future aesthetic, and I love the hell out of it. The song currently playing is Pronotion, and it's one of my favorites from just like jumping around the track list. This synthy type of futuristic song is what a lot of the Mega Collection uses as its backing tracks for its menus. They act as a nice atmospheric and playful setting for the game collection. Can we just like talk about this choir synth for a second? Because if nothing else, it is the foundational aspect of this work that makes it sound otherworldly. It's laid on like heavy at the start of the song, and it just persists. It carries the mood and tone of this like entire track. I think we have a lot of associations with choirs and like traditionally churches. As choirs and hymns are, part of a lot of religious practices. So in turn, I think a lot of us tend to recognize choirs as symbolic of a higher meaning, which makes their inclusion in music naturally lead us to an association with, deeper meaning or an elevated sense of importance. And goddamn, they lay it on thick at the start. Then we come to the main melody. It starts with this really vibrant saxophone, and the notes to it have a really long and deliberate timing to them. It just becomes routine when all the notes will play. I think that gives the listener a lot more room to focus on the variation rather than the composition of where the notes are. Its melody rises triumphantly, and then it ends either on that note or with a minor key, which gives this like story to the notes. It makes it very dramatic and melancholic. In a way, it's kind of a musical shorthand for remembrance as an idea. Remembering a good time has you reflecting on the positivity it gave you, the good memories. But there's also that looming knowledge that the moment's passed, and it's sad that you aren't living within it anymore. I also want to talk about the metal xylophone in the backing track. It goes to support this main saxophone melody, and there's a lot of variation to the timing, but it always feels like that instrument adds just a little more variety in between the saxophone's long notes. It almost sounds like a shooting star. It's this very shiny instrument. It just like transports you into that ethereal headspace. I think the playfulness is just a really nice touch. I mean, the History Museum and the Gems Collection is a museum about, funny, silly video game characters. It's not that serious.
Oh no!
There's also this amazing string that acts as a bridge. The main melody will conclude on the saxophone, and after it does that, this harp, just beautiful string will play to bridge to the loop of the song. I don't have much else to say other than it's really pretty. In general, despite being a computer synthesized song, it just has this focus on instruments that sound more natural, more wooden, and evocative of more basic musical tools. It's almost like we're listening to an orchestra play on the big stage because of the echo after each instrument. I mean, you have the saxophone, it's one of the classical trumpets, has a lot of roots in big band performance. And the string is just so similar to a harp. The slower plucking kind of reminds me of solo harp players that you'd see in, the Roman Empire. That xylophone has such an echo that rings out every time it hits. It's almost like we're in a big theater. There's also this small but important part of the track I want to mention. It's the soft and modern sounding drums. The drums are very bassy. The cymbals are also so faded. I believe they sound modern because the kit is mixed to be filtered and a little quieter. The BPM stays consistent and slow throughout the song. It sounds kind of like the beat you'd hear in a forward march. And yet when I listen to the song, I get this feeling about the drums. They sound so foreign to the rest of the track. It's almost like the song could exist without them, but they fit so well within the soundscape of it. What I believe is that the drums are actually more evocative of the modern Sonic games. So why would I think that? The song plays in the Mega Collection's history section, which shows Sega's old history with Sonic. So how would you represent that idea of showing your history through a song? That's where I think the traditional types of instruments fill their role in the song. They sound nostalgic, so it harkens back to a former kind of glory musically. I mean, during the 2000s, synthesized instruments were still new. There was still this distinction between music that was performed traditionally and music done entirely in a studio. So naturally, these types of performance-based instruments carry the symbology of nostalgia for some people. They were all we had to make music before the computer age. And that's why I feel they help characterize the History Museum and Mega Collection so well. The entire song might be synthesized, but the beat on the drums just has this energy to it that isn't matched by the other instruments. I feel that disconnect is indicative of how Sonic Team was moving forward with these new Sonic games. So why not have the drums be a more modern call forward to the new series of Sonic games? I imagine almost like a former band in reunion as they pass the torch to a newer generation of players. While actually researching for this video, I found this Reddit thread that asks, is it bad if I just want to cry while listening to this track? And somebody said something actually pretty similar to what I said about this being a send-off to the classic series. I felt extremely emotional hearing this music because this Mega Collection was my understanding of Sonic and felt comforted by it, yet felt Sonic was changing into something else. The adventure era was all the rage that I wasn't able to accept at the time. I think the song having its almost angelic, slow and sad feeling was kind of a farewell to the older 90s Sonic of the past. If you take into consideration of how the Dreamcast failed, there's naturally always going to be a split between how older Sonic fans would be alongside newer fans. The appeal of Sonic was now in a generational split from this classic 2D Sonic that people from the 90s grew up with and the newer 3D Sonic fans who had never even played the originals. I've always seen Sonic Mega Collection as a way to bridge the gap of understanding and appreciation between those two groups. It was released during Sega's jump to the third-party support, which meant there were not a lot of gamers who knew Sega's extensive backlog with Sonic. The Mega Collection was a way to reintroduce the story of how Sonic became a big name and how he got his start in the industry. The entire song resonates this turbulent time period with a gracefully nostalgic feel. It uses natural instruments to evoke the past, the game being a way to reintroduce the past into today, and finally just being a way that Sega could wave goodbye to its own history with Sonic, trying to take the company into a new age. A lot of people in the comments section of these videos put profoundly personal and meaningful stories under the comment section of these reposted OSTs. It's hard not to feel that nostalgia that the song evokes now with such hard times facing the world. These songs that evoke in many of us that sense of longing for our childhoods. It's very alluring to think about the time where life wasn't so hard and overwhelming. And maybe it's a little naive to reignite those emotions that were driven by ignorance. Despite the fact, reminiscing on memories that make you happy is never a bad thing to evoke from music. I think a song being an escape to reminisce on specific moments that are meaningful in your life is beautiful. Focusing on those moments where they shine, even with seemingly mundane moments of your life, I believe that guides you to an understanding of what makes you truly happy. This song is a reminder that we can both mourn the past and celebrate the future. It's through knowing your history, it's through how the natural evolution of change takes place, evoking a simpler time. The song really slams its point into your head. You are still that same child you were when you first heard this. It connects your two hearts together and makes this beacon of light that immerses you back into that headspace. When I sat there just straining my eyes up at my gray TV with this orange tinted lighting of my childhood ceiling fan, I was flipping through these pages of these old Sonic comics, discovering so much information about what Sonic used to be. Around every corner, there was just some like strange, obscure fact about this character. And it was so overwhelmingly cool and interesting, but I just had this immense sad feeling while looking at it. It made me feel like I was born too late to experience it. It was hard to shake that feeling like throughout the time that I took to look at it. This could have just been lost if no one had shown it to me. While going through that comic section, I was wild with curiosity. I wondered what the inside of these comic covers held. And for the record, I think Archie Sonic has always been great at delivering amazing covers for their Sonic comics. And the comics represented within the History Museum were no exception. Sonic has always just meant a lot to me. I explored so much myself through him, through my art, my interest in Son Amy art surfing, or just my love of the adventure games and the videos created around them in general. It always seemed like I knew everything about him, and the barrier was blown wide open when I got this game. With the Sonic fan base, due to the different nature of Sonic games, the community has been split more than once. It's more like this republic of coalitions rather than any kind of centralized fan base, and people like me come back to reminisce about the loss of the adventure games with Sonic 06. And it is kind of really nerdy to be nostalgic about a couple or so games that are around a decade old. And I feel that's why my main investment nowadays is what Sonic fans contribute as a third party to Sonic Media. Usually the fan projects or games captivate more of my attention as they appeal more specifically to my niches with Sonic. I think that just goes to show how Sonic is more of a gaming medium than a direct icon. As a community, it's important to know why people find these older games compelling. And yeah, maybe I'm not personally too into the 2D Sonic games, but collections like these are important for reminding the greater community of where it all originated from. It was more important for a game to take this role during a 2000s release because it was before the internet became this wide sharing net that it is today. All in all, the song just eternalizes this fragile and reminiscent moment in history. It takes a lot of people back and makes me really appreciate how Sonic means so much to so many different groups, and that's why it's beautiful. I also want to put this aside that I think a lot of people try and point out the Sonic series as being kind of a trend chaser. Out of necessity, it was Sega's idea to use that kind of 90s cool branding aesthetic to launch off Sonic as a series in America, right? And while it might be true that's where the series started, I believe it's given the series this like flexibility to experiment with new titles. And it's this experimentation that gives Sonic to have the potential of feeling fresh, even with its oftentimes mixed results. More so, I see the Sonic community with their fan games and art, you know, evolve Sonic from Sega's original vision. No matter what, Hideki Kobayashi is a fucking legend for making this song. I like a lot of the music from Phantasy Star Online. I need to listen to more of it, you know, something that I probably won't do, but I definitely do need to do, you know what I mean? So yeah, video over. If you enjoyed it, I'm glad, and if you want to leave a like to show your support, thanks for that too. I'm sure it like does algorithm stuffs to make it all boosted. Don't ask me, I'm not like a computer guy like that. But I am a big Sonic fan, and I want to get more videos like this about other topics too, hopefully. God, this thing took like 2-3 months to make for like such a small little video, but you know, the only other socials I have are like my Twitter and Insta at Mike Robo. Post art there if you want to see that, and otherwise, thanks for watching.
That was cool!